Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel English Online by Sunny Singh. Here in this video, I'm just going to talk about Tricky's transformation. This is part second of a triumph of surgery. In this video, we will discuss the important questions that might be asked in the examinations, and we will discuss the theme and the character sketch of the important characters, the main protagonist. इस वीडियो में हम जो मेन प्रोटागनिस्ट है इस स्टोरी के उसके कैरेक्टर स्केच पे डिस्कस करेंगे. I've already made a video describing the very important concerns or main concerns that could be asked in exam. That is in part first. So let's study and come to know the Tricky's transformation. Remember, as we already studied in this video, we are going to discuss its transformation story. Tricky, which was a drug, and it was in the problem, he was sick, so it was brought to the doctor, and Dr. Harriott transformed Tricky into a fit and slim dog, which is called as the transformation, and that is also called the triumph of surgery. It's a victory of surgery called by Mrs. Pomfrey, the honor of the dog. Here we have already discussed the theme in the previous video, although it says that the story is a triumph of surgery and it is about a dog named Tricky. The story is about a blind love and faith of Mrs. Pomfrey that she used to show with her dog Tricky. She had no idea that her pampering and extreme love would cause him trouble. Excessive love made Tricky sick and became a reason for his illness. She fed up so much, so the dog got sick. Her concern that overindulged in any form can lead to extreme consequences. Remember, the story deals that if you overindulge in any concern, then that might lead you in extreme consequences or in trouble. Here we go for the characteristics, and of course the part next talks about it. The main characters you already know in the story. There are three main characters, and they are Mrs. Pomfrey, who is the owner of the dog, Mrs. Pomfrey, remember, mistress of dog, and then Dr. Harriott and the dog itself, that Tricky. So let's study about Mrs. Pomfrey. Mrs. Pomfrey is a rich and resourceful lady. She is very rich and resourceful lady. She has everything that she wishes, and she is passionately attached to her little pet dog that's called Tricky. She was so much attached to her little pet dog that she spoilt it. So the story talks like pampers Tricky like a spoiled child. She behaves here like she is behaving in a pampering to a child, like she has pampered Tricky like a spoiled child. Remember, she had made Tricky unable to do anything by overfeeding. Now thinks Tricky to be suffering from malnutrition. This lady, Mrs. Pomfrey, thinks that the dog was malnutrited and he was suffering from malnutrition, so overfeeds him. She gives him a lot to eat, and like gets worried about Tricky's falling health. She is impractical but very passionate, very compassionate and caring, is grateful and thanks Dr. Harriott for saving Tricky's life. Remember, Mrs. Pomfrey was the owner of the dog Tricky. She was a rich and resourceful lady, passionate, attracted to the little dog Tricky. Pomfrey pampered the dog like a spoiled child. Tricky, which was the dog, started suffering as she thought that it was malnutrition and she overfed it. And now she gets worried about falling health of Tricky, and in fact we can say she was impractical, not practical. She was compassionate and caring but not practical. She was impractical. And it's a important point that she was grateful for Dr. Harriott, as she calls the victory, the triumph of surgery, when the dog was transformed from the plumpy, sick to the active and energetic dog. Now, after knowing about Pomfrey, let's come to know about Tricky, the character sketch of Tricky. You already know Tricky is a small dog. It's a dog who loves eating, is a greedy for food dog who was greedy for food. Tricky loves eating and keeps eating. Eat Overeating on sweets, cake and chocolates make him obvious, makes him very fat and unable to move, rheumy and listless. Tricky's eyes were full of water. It was rheumy, it was watery, and even could not breathe properly because of it. Now, Tricky becomes a victim of overindulgence and overfeeding, transformed into a flexible and hard muscled dog by Dr. Harriott. Remember, Tricky was transformed, changed into a hard muscled dog afterwards by Dr. Harriott's involvement in the story. And earlier it was overfeeding dog. The lady Mrs. Pomfrey loved feeding her dog a lot, and even Tricky was greedy for food. Now Tricky displays his love for his mistress by jumping onto her lap when she comes to collect Tricky at the doctor's center, Mr. Harriott center. Remember, this is the last point that we can understand in the story. When Mrs. Pomfrey comes to receive the dog from doctor, Tricky jumps on her and shows his love for his mistress. Now, after knowing Tricky's character, we have only one character left, and that's Dr. Harriott. Remember, guys, Dr. James Harriott is the competent veterinarian surgeon. He was a veterinary surgeon, and in this story, he talks about his real life experience that he has experienced in his lifetime. It's about his own experience of his lifetime that he noticed. Is a sensible, practical and pragmatic. He is very practical man, and with his own idea, with his genuinely concerned about Tricky, he made the dog very fit. He is very tactful as well as full of common sense. Remember, when you go through the line wise, you will find that he is so much careful and concerned with his common sense that he didn't provide any food to eat the dog. For 2 days, he didn't provide anything to the dog and only provided the plenty of water that he required, which made him cure. And now he was feeling hungry and started moving towards the ball of food. He cures Tricky without any medical treatment. Remember, he cures Tricky without any medical treatment. It shows that he was very much practical and concerned to the treatment of the animals, and very much experienced for this. Is passionate about helping animals. He is very passionate towards helping animal. That's the characteristics of James Harriott, the doctor who transformed the dog. And I think that all these three characters brought very important values, very concerned things in the lesson, which can be understand like excessive pampering and indulgence causes harm. Remember guys, if you indulge in something excessively, it may cause harm. One should not be extravagant with resources and money. Here in the story, we can see Mrs. Pomfrey was so much extravagant. Extravagant means one who spends lots more than required is called extravagant. फिजूल खर्च करना, that's फिजूल खर्ची what we say. जहाँ ज़रूरत भी नहीं है वहाँ खर्च कर देना, जिस चीज़ की रिसोर्स की ज़रूरत नहीं है वेस्ट करने की, वो वेस्ट कर देना. So here we learn this, that we should not be extravagant, and we should use our resource, available resource and money at the proper point, proper things, not for anything that is not as necessary. Some problem can be solved with pragmatism. Remember, here is also a lesson, here is also a value point, that some problems can be solved with our practical knowledge. If you become pragmatism, remember pragmatism indicates that practical knowledge or experience, which you can see in the Dr. Harriott, which when he changed the dogs. These are the value points of this story which may be asked in the exams. And let's conclude this story with the idea or thought like ability is what you are capable of doing. If you are capable of doing anything, then that's your ability. Remember, motivation from the story says that motivation determines what you do, and attitude determines how well you do, which we can understand from this story. Hope you understood the story. See you all. Till then, take a moment to share, subscribe, and understand. Do write me your comment. If there is any query, you may put on the chat box. Thank you and